I'm the king of the seas, hero of the storms. I am Jean Delamer! Would you look at that? A debate's already underway. Don't see why you'd be storing a gun in a janitor's closet. Wonder if that killer stole it from her. Blood. Aye. It should have gotten everywhere. Those wounds were brutal. A few inches deep, I reckon. Carrying her would have done nothing to stop the blood flow. I bet that girl didn't even see them coming. Appreciate the support, but you're not talking any sense, mate. The past is in the past, and we can't change that. All we can do is solve her untimely death, eh? Hold your horses. That doesn't prove the killer put the bleach in a container. Well, if you check the tablet, it said she had burns to the scalp, too. He obviously didn't just stand there and observe. Something done on impulse? Making the plan is sadistic enough, but actually executing it? You'd need to be a real psychopath. Aye, they needed a way to surprise the victim, who was better armed. The killer grabbed a bottle of bleach from the closet and poured its contents into a bucket. What did Grace do? There weren't many of us there. Had someone disappeared, it would have been obvious. She's right. The 8 of us split into 4 pairs and inspected a storage room each. You two were originally bunking together? Hold on a sec. That ain't what you told me this morning. Simply put, she felt like competing. Grace knew I planned to compete as well, so she asked me to be her sparring partner, since you needed one to enter the tournament. Aye, that she did. Course, since I now know Wolfgang's condition at the time, I can't say I blame her. If someone you cared for was in a vulnerable position, would you go around and admit that in a killing game? No. You would try to protect that person by saying nothing at all. I was hesitant to admit it, since I knew it would put me on the spot. But I'd rather be suspected than be the reason this trial comes to a standstill. Nah, not his. However, it's thanks to him that I have my own. Wolfgang approached me the same day everyone received an envelope. Funnily enough, it happened right after I'd finished speaking with my own person. He and we had a good talk. He gave me his envelope and asked me to take care of it. If you need the proof. Aye, I held on to the letter for safekeeping. This should have all been said sooner. I realize that. I suppose my pride was stronger than my rectitude. My mistake for stringing everyone along. Not everyone has the stomach for investigating. That's fine. That's why you got people like me to do the heavy lifting. Since some of us here weren't able to investigate Wolfgang's body, I'll lay out his injuries. There were 2 marks on the back of his neck, a bruise, and a tiny red dot. His hands were burnt too, so 3 injuries in total. Besides that, I caught nothing else. These didn't look like normal burns. Not the sort you'd get from a stove fire, or a hot iron, or a flamethrower, I suppose. Sorry, lass. I was aware of lightning paralysis, but even I didn't know its official name. That's a nice head you've got on your shoulders. Nay, those burns were fresh. One look was all it took for me to know that. If he had these scars before, we would have noticed them anyway. If you're standing in the water, one outlet should be enough. Speaking from experience, large bodies of water are terrifying conductors during storms. All it takes is one lightning bolt, and the surrounding miles are scorched. Electricity is electricity. Doesn't matter how it manifests. The reason you two avoided electrocution is because the generator's exposed wires aren't even touching the water. If they were, you would have been scorched right from the start. Nah, even in its current sorry state, the generator's wires are nowhere near the water. As for why the generator's been charred, sometimes electrical faults happen. Even my ship's engines have broken under particularly relentless storms. And if an electrical fault caused Wolfgang's death, then his murder is purely on the hosts, ain't it? Alas, we stayed in my abode. I couldn't tell you if he had weapons. Aye, that he has. Grace, I realize Desmond's irked you, but that's no reason to keep steering everyone down a dead end. Let's move on. Seems there was a mountain of opportunities for our culprit to sneak in unnoticed. Doesn't exactly help us narrow things down, does it? Ashamed to say I also brushed off the footsteps. Thought I was hearing things. However, since other people can attest to hearing them, I'm sure we can all vouch for that, aye? Diana, don't tell me. Depends. If a vein got nipped, you'd be seeing blood no matter the size of the cut. Course, that also means a small cut will need bandaging, which I'm not seeing on you. That's what caused the wound, mate, not healed. Ah, she used the classic maneuver. Picking a lock with a hairpin. It can be done, it just takes a bit of practice. Aye. I'd rather resolve this thread before we move on to voting. Not in the moment, it isn't. But what if the doorknob had been swapped beforehand? Say this person knew Wolfgang and Diana were coming to the boiler room. They could have swapped the knob in advance, waited for Diana and Wolfgang to enter, and then closed and locked the door. With what we currently know, I'd wager it's our safest assumption. At least, until we hear Diana's side of the story. We are not in a rush. I say we hear Diana out. Hold on a sec. If you take a closer look, the handwriting on that note, doesn't it resemble the handwriting on Wolfgang's note? Did you catch any strange movement down there? This was shortly before us tournament goers split up. And you made a run for it, yeah? I wouldn't say it was for no reason. Huh? I didn't mean it like that. What I'm trying to say is, Wolfgang's actions may look random from an outsider's perspective, but from his perspective, well, judging by his behavior, it seems like he saw something which shook him to his core. He thought he saw something, is my point. You'd be surprised by the sort of things our minds can invent. I'm lucky to have never experienced anything myself, but I know some who have hallucinated nasty things, demons and monsters, or the feeling of being tortured. If Wolfgang went through something similar, I can see why he lashed out. Course, these hallucinations don't just happen out of the blue. More often than not, they're substance-induced. One which induced a lot of fatigue, too, judging by the way he lumbered about in Diana's account. Seems very deliberate, aye. I reckon the killer knocked Wolfgang unconscious in order to drag him into the water, but knew he would eventually wake up again. So they drugged him with something which would basically make him despondent. As for where the drug came from... Now hold on. Diana came to the boiler room roughly half an hour after Wolfgang got knocked out. A pill ain't gonna be fully digested in that small amount of time. If Wolfgang inhaled something, there should have been traces of it in his nose or throat. Bath salts are messy business. There's very little chance we wouldn't see leftover minerals at the crime scene. Nope. Considering the timeline of events, an injection would check out. If Wolfgang got drugged a little after 8:15 a.m., and was already feeling the effects when Diana arrived at 8:45 a.m., then we're dealing with something which entered his bloodstream in under 30 minutes. Any normal pill would have taken Probably an hour to dissolve. Could have just been an electrical fault. You never know. Even my ship ain't immune to the odd electrical fault. Storage closet D, huh? It was hard to make out much of it in the dark, and after the power came on, Kai came screaming for us to leave our closets. But I do recall seeing some extension cords peeking out from behind a shelf. Probably something involving the generator, given its proximity to the cord. Tis a sign a chemical reaction was at play. Chemical reactions can produce some pretty pungent odors, usually something to the tune of alcohol mixed with cereal, or fruits, or eggs. I noticed the smell going into the investigation, but it had completely slipped my mind until now. I see. A lithium battery might explain the smell in the air. A lithium battery would be an almost instantaneous reaction, I'm pretty sure. Judging by the shrapnel, the battery would have landed in the water, a few inches from the generator. The evidence tells a different story, mate. Considering the generator's size, I doubt there'd be enough space for a box to fit. If there was, the box in question would still be up there right now. At the same time, what he's describing sounds plausible. I was spectating as well. Even so, the sheer volume of items Eva had to steal. She's been under heavy suspicion these past few days. How did she sneak into Jet and Desmond's rooms without being noticed? She would have known about those boxes in advance, too, since she explored the boiler room with you ahead of time. We're talking about the sofa in the upper left corner, aye? The one next to the coffee table. I also remember seeing a speaker in that corner. Don't think there's any fancy tricks over there. It's a bit too far from the vent. Some things are better left unsaid. Truth has no personal alliance. That's why. Right. Only Mark's DJ pad had a clock. Seems natural he would stock that machine with dangerous items, with this being a killing game and all. Which brings us to today. Knowing better than to head downstairs without protection, Wolfgang went to the kitchen and armed himself with a knife. Toshiko didn't notice a knife on him when the two met in the hallway, so he must have hidden it in his blazer. A syringe was then used to inject Wolfgang with a sleeping drug, ensuring he would remain in the boiler room until Diana arrived. The drugs probably gave him a frightening hallucination, and he perceived you as a threat. Not for long, though. We quickly came back to our senses and agreed to look for a backup generator on the underground floor. Now this feels like home. Not so much me, but my men. Ha! During break, they'll flock like seagulls to my ship's arcade. Aye. How we feelin'? Take a breather. I hear ya. Leave it to me. Stand back. That ain't it. I see. That's right. Hold your horses. Are we ready? I'll be damned. Christ almighty! Son of a... Ha! Watch it. Pirate! It is how it is. My mistake. Bad news. Atta boy. Atta girl. Good to know. How's that sound? Ha ha! Huh? Don't even try it. I'm real sorry. Not again. You all. Chemistry, son. Feels like home.